No event is complete without a robust discussion. To facilitate the next panel session, could I invite our facilitator for this evening, Associate Professor Peter Waring, to come up and facilitate the session with our panelists. Associate Professor Peter Waring is Singapore Dean. Peter is responsible for advancing the university's academic and strategic interests in Singapore. He's previously held academic positions at the University of Newcastle, at the University of New South Wales, Asia, including the leadership positions of Acting Pro-Vice Chancellor International at the University of Newcastle and Academic Director and Deputy CEO of Newcastle Singapore Operations. Peter is also a qualified lawyer, hence he's here as a facilitator, so he can advocate both sides of innovation, whether it's good or not so good. So thank you, Peter, for being here. Can I now invite Professor Eva Lennonen to join the panel? Professor Lennonen, as introduced a few minutes ago, has a background in linguistics and psychology with extensive international experience in higher education spanning Europe, Middle East, and Australasia. Prior to joining Murdoch, she has held positions as Deputy Vice Chancellor at the University of Wollongong, Vice Principal Education and Professor of Clinical Linguistics at King's College London. Her academic research focuses on the pragmatic deficits of children with autistic spectrum disorders, as well as higher education topics relating to curriculum and the use of technology in learning. Welcome, Professor Eva Lennonen. We're also pleased to have with us Mr. Leon Chung, the president of Kaplan Singapore, with us today. Ranked consistently as the #1 preferred private education institution in the Job Central Learning Survey since 2013, Kaplan Singapore is one of the most respected private education institutions in Southeast Asia, and we're proud to call them our partners. Leon has close to 2 decades' experience as an educator and a successful entrepreneur. He's an advocate for educational innovation and the creation of new markets to help more people gain access to quality education. Leon also sits on the Management Council of the Singapore Association of Private Educators, where he serves as the honorary treasurer. Welcome, Mr. Chung. Our banking partner for the Innovate Singapore competition, Commonwealth Bank of Australia, has sent their most talented representative up from Perth. Mr. Evan Schmidt is Associate Director at the Institutional Banking and Markets team at the Commonwealth Bank of Australia. Evan is based in Perth and specializes in the government, health, and education sectors. In his role, he's responsible for providing the bank's institutional clients with market-leading capabilities, unique insights, and capital solutions. Welcome, Mr. Schmidt. And last but not the least, Ms. Gemma Manning, the serial entrepreneur and strategic marketing professional. She's the founder and managing director of Manning & Co. in Sydney, a corporate marketing consultancy based in Sydney, Australia, and also MD at Gemstar Technology, a launching pad for tech startups and innovators in Southeast Asia, using Singapore as a gateway. Gemma was nominated and shortlisted for the Telstra Young Women's Business Award in 2011 and 2012. She's heavily involved in the entrepreneurial communities in both Australia and Singapore, but also globally. Earlier this year, she was invited to pitch another of her ventures to Sir Richard Branson. With that, can I invite Ms. Gemma Manning up as the panelist? And I think Professor Waring is ready to go.
Good afternoon. Yes, we are, indeed. Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you so much for disclosing my legal background. Sometimes a conversation stopper. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this panel discussion. I'm sure you'll agree with me when I say that we've assembled a wonderful panel for this short discussion, and hopefully we'll also have some time for your questions and the panelists' answers. I wanted to begin by saying that it seems like we are living in a world where innovation is considered to be the new black. We're surrounded by evidence of innovation, especially in technology companies and companies that have leveraged technology in novel ways that permit collaborative consumption, like Uber, Grab Taxi here in Singapore, of course, and Airbnb. And other traditional sectors, from higher education through to banking and transport and logistics, are said to be at risk from aggressive startups and non-traditional competitors. we're told that this is the age of disruption and that we ought to disrupt before we are disrupted ourselves. We're told that there's a global race underway to innovate and that nations are investing in innovation policies, in launch pads, in incubators, in accelerators, in slingshots, in order to come up with the next big thing. So it's against this background that I'd like to be just a little bit daring and perhaps challenge some of the underlying assumptions of innovation as it's currently understood. So let me start this discussion by noting something that Silicon Valley entrepreneur Peter Thiel once said. He said the following: "We were promised flying cars. Instead, we got 140 characters," in reference to Twitter. He was lamenting that much of the innovation that we've witnessed over the last 10 years or so has been largely unproductive and somewhat frivolous. Instead of space travel, we've wasted engineering talent developing Pokemon Go. So, to respond to this contention, let me firstly ask Gemma Manning.
I'm assuming this word. Yep. Okay. Thank you. Firstly, thank you for having me here, and I'm really looking forward to working in this partnership going forward. So yes, first cab off the rank. I guess in my position, I come across a lot of innovation-led businesses daily, and I would agree that there are some, that probably don't have such an impact on the economy or on in the environment, and so they could be deemed as frivolous. So I see a lot of coffee apps coming through and various things like that, but I also am very privileged to see a lot of deep innovation-led ideas coming out, both in Australia and in Singapore. And I think the challenge, though, is the commercialisation aspect, and I think we spoke about that already in some of the introductions. So there is a lot of innovation happening out there, a lot of quality innovation. I'll just give you a couple of examples. We recently hosted what we call a tech trade mission just a couple of weeks ago. I was delighted to host about 6 Australian companies during that trade mission. So we were unearthing them here in Singapore. Very, very impressive innovations that are going through the process of commercialisation, some more early stage than others. But when applied and when they come to market, they're going to have long-lasting, positive, profound transformation impact. So one was out of WA looking at the production of hydrogen and graphite, and their innovation was using iron ore as a catalyst agent. So I think when we're talking about innovation, it's not always necessarily technology-led either, and I know there's a question that will come to that. So I think we need to be mindful of not getting too trapped in the innovation equals technology all the time. So, and that's something that I think we kind of jump too quickly to think, technology and innovation is kind of two interlinked and it's the same thing, where in my mind it's quite different. So going back to that example, it was the way that they were looking at the hydrogen process and using iron ore as the innovative way of doing that. They're early stage and they're yet to kind of commercialise. They want to bring a pilot plant here to Singapore, but that's a game changer globally. And so you do come across these hidden gems, if you like, of innovation, and it's there, and I see it daily. So I'd say, yes, you come across the frivolous ones at times. I've seen a number of social media apps, and you think, how many do we need of these, social media platforms? But I'm also seeing very quality, deep technologies, but innovation-led kind of things coming out of both Australia and Singapore. So that's what I have to say on it.
Thank you so much, Gemma, indeed. Leon, I'm aware that you're very fond of technology, and you were an early adopter of a smartwatch, for example. So what do you think about Peter Thiel's contention that a lot of what we have seen as far as innovation is concerned is actually quite frivolous?
First of all, I was quite bemused that you quoted Peter Thiel, because when I think of the gentleman, I think of the enemy of the free press and possibly a fervent Donald Trump supporter. So, but I don't want to sound like an apologist for Twitter, but I think it is frivolous, and it may seem like a party for a lot of people, but it's also where the best minds in the world are assembled. It's where all the thought leaders are present, and they are immediately and for free engaging with the world at large, with whatever concerns them, whatever thoughts that go through their heads that they want to share with people. And you can also engage back. I mean, it's not as if it's a one-way flow of ideas and so on. So I think if you want to stay current with the pulse of what's happening and where the world's heading and what concerns a great mass of people, you don't have to follow every single person, but the key people, you can. And I think graduates will have to engage with innovation if they want to be relevant to employers and to be useful in the new economy. So. That's basically my
possibly a good segue to our Vice Chancellor. Ava, would you like to comment?
Sure, thank you. I think I'm going to say something controversial, which is that I think the best innovation is frivolous and unproductive. I was thinking about the Wright brothers and their flying machines, and they were rushing about and putting these wings together, and people were thinking that's really frivolous and unproductive. What could ever come of that? I was also thinking about IBM and their first computers, and people said, well, about maybe 200 of these will be sold in the next 10 years or something like that. So I think that maybe innovation at some point is always unproductive and frivolous. And through that, same as research. Research can be very unproductive, but unproductive in the sense that you don't have the desired outcome in the first instance. It's about trial and error and failing and learning from that failure. And I thought maybe Google had something interesting to say when they said, fail often, fail fast, because it means that innovation is sometimes a bit frivolous before you get to some of the outcomes that you're aiming for.
Thank you very much. And of course, Peter Thiel is known as being one of the founders of PayPal, who made one of the first incursions into the traditional banking sector. So, Evan, I wonder what you might say about his words.
I think it's important that people are realistic in their expectations around innovation and the time frame involved. The first product or idea or concept may not have a lot of value, but the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, that's where the value is. So I don't think you can judge today's innovative concepts or designs at the moment. I think you need to judge them in the future. And also technology will accelerate the progress that innovative ideas and concepts can make. So I agree, it's not always the answer, but it'll accelerate where we get to. The other thing to think about as well, I think, is the demand. So demand for a product and also the ability to commercialise that product are key. So when we think about a flying car, is there a demand for a flying car? Possibly. If there is, how come it hasn't been developed? And the answers may be, or the questions we need to ask may be, do we have the right framework in place to fund something like this? Are investors prepared to go up the risk curve to fund innovation? Do we have the right legislative framework in place to make it happen? I think there's some of the questions that we need to ask when we're thinking about innovation, but I don't think you can judge products today because I think there'll be things that'll be built off the back of them that'll be far more valuable.
Okay, thank you very much. Recently, I was scanning the recruitment section of a newspaper, and there was an advertisement there seeking engineering talent for bendable screen technology. Now, I have no idea what bendable screen technology is, but it made me think about the future and how universities are preparing our graduates for that future. So picking up on your earlier introductory remarks, Ava, are universities doing enough to ensure that our graduates are employable for positions that we don't know are coming and cannot know?
Yes, that is the big challenge for universities at this point in time, is when we don't know what the world looks like when our graduates are part of that and creating that. So are we doing enough? What we need to be doing, we know, is creating educational experiences for our students that enable them to be flexible, creative, all those things I said earlier. We are doing that up to a point, but universities can always also be, they're big organizations, quite slow-moving machineries. So I think that part of the disruption that is on its way for universities is to become much more fleet of foot, much more able to change and also respond to the needs of society. And I think that's, we have various other organizations now coming into the higher education space. We have Google, we have Apple, we have MOOCs, we have technology, and so on. And I think universities are responding very well to those challenges. But there's a way to go yet. But I think we know where we want to be. We want to be in a position where our students are able to create their own futures and futures for other people as well, because that's what graduates are about.
Thank you very much. Leon, you would know only too well that the Singapore government at the moment is very much focused on graduate employability. How do we prepare graduates for a world that's going to be disrupted continuously, it seems?
I think whatever jobs you prepare graduates for, they will become obsolete so quickly in the very near future. It's going to be very difficult. So what you need to do is prepare people who are able to adapt and evolve in an ever-changing environment. We were at a panel yesterday where they said the Ministry of Education in Singapore is preparing people in the 21st century to be great problem solvers, but that's not what the leaders of the future will need to be. What you need are people who are able to master and manage paradoxes, hold two opposing ideas in their heads and still function, and that's what's needed for the future.
Thank you. Gemma, do you have some thoughts on this particular point around graduate employability and preparing university graduates for the future?
Absolutely. I am an employer, being a small business owner and entrepreneur, so I'm very close to this from the other side of things. And I do think, I mentioned earlier that commercialisation I feel is a huge challenge, and there's a paradigm in a way that, we've got Australia, Singapore really pushing innovation, trying to encourage graduates and alumni and young people to become entrepreneurs, but becoming an entrepreneur requires a whole sort of skill set that's not able to be learned at university. So I feel like focusing on soft skills, focusing on skills that are required to be an entrepreneur and to develop an innovation is what's really required. I think that the technical skills will be there, and it's very hard to kind of predict what that will look like in the future, and these degrees do become obsolete. But soft skills are definitely what is required, and that is what I look for when I employ people.
Okay. And is that also something that the Commonwealth Bank looks for, soft skills and adaptability, entrepreneurial skills?
Absolutely, Peter. It's the ability to work in a team is by far the greatest skill that we need. And one thing that we're certainly I've seen in the last 5 years has been when you're working on a project team within the bank or whatever organisation you're involved with, organisations are liking, or they would like to get people from different areas with different experience, so it's mixing that skill set. But I think from a university point of view, I think if universities can engage with industry to make sure that they're producing graduates who are equipped with the right skills, that's probably the best way forward. And I think a competition like this is a great example of that.
Thank you indeed. Gemma, I want to pick up on something that you said earlier. You said that innovation doesn't automatically equate to technology or technological improvement. My question is innovation always the most effective business response?
I do believe so. So again, I come back to the point that we can't always confuse the two, and I think innovation needs to be defined separately, and we should have a diverse view of innovation and define it like that. From where I sit, I work with a range of companies under both of my businesses. So I work with a number of tech companies, innovators, as well as more established businesses. So businesses, management consulting businesses, recruitment businesses. And I was here a couple of weeks ago with a handful of companies, as I mentioned before, and some of my clients. And one of my clients won the Innovator, the Global Recruiters Awards, and they won Best Innovator in Recruitment. They said to me before the awards dinner, Gemma, there's no way we're going to win this because we don't have a technology platform. We're in this category for Best Innovative Recruiter, yet we don't have all the other people in this field or this category have got either a technology platform or something technology associated. They won the category, and it was because of their approach to recruitment in this day and age, driven by emotional intelligence. So this client was Future People, and it was really rewarding to see as a recruitment business them winning the award for innovation based on their approach to recruitment. So I don't think, again, I think we need to look at innovation more broadly and understand that more established businesses are looking at new ways of doing things to improve their own business performance and to look at, how they're operating within this kind of changing landscape. I think that's something that, we shouldn't lose sight of those kind of innovations as well.
Well, I guess Kaplan is one of those established businesses. So what do you think? Do you think, Leon, that innovation is always the most effective business response? Is that something that you're continuously trying to encourage in your teams?
Yes, it is. I mean, it's not easy at first, but it's something that you have to inculcate, and it's not something that you can just print on a poster and put on a wall and say this is something you should do. You actually have to lead by example and maybe ask very simple questions. And sometimes ideas can come from the most strange places. This is something that we do have to back. I mean, organizations, you may think of the most boring organization that you can think of, and I can imagine a ketchup company like Heinz, for example, who does baked beans and Heinz. But you realize that if you dig a little bit deeper, they have 160 R&D staff constantly producing low-fat, low-calorie diet food supplements and so on, and even the bottles in which they are dispensed and so on is constantly being adapted and changed all the time. So even the most from the outside, boring organizations have to innovate in order to give stakeholder value.
And Evan, would you agree with that?
I would. I think innovation is really critical to that, because the way you could look at it is that innovation helps drive efficiency, and efficiency drives productivity in the economy. So for an organisation to successfully innovate, they probably really need four things. That is, they need an innovative culture, so they need to make sure that people are promoted and rewarded for being innovative. They need leadership, and leaders need to drive the innovation agenda. They need also, in terms of their staff, to feel like they're empowered. So the staff need to, because that's where your ideas are going to come from. And the last thing you need is ultimately execution. So you need to be able to execute on your innovation. So without leadership driving it from the top down, you don't have execution. Without funding, you don't have execution. Without your staff, you don't have execution. And without execution, you don't have innovation. That's sort of how I would see what you need in an organisation to be successful.
Just picking up on Evan's point, Ava, if I may, in your experience, do you believe that Australian universities in general are doing enough to cultivate a culture of innovation?
I think of innovation in a very broad sense, so I agree with what has been said before. Innovation is about doing things differently. And when I think about your question about whether innovation is the best response to a challenge, it's probably the only response to a challenge, because when you have a challenge, it means that what you have in place at that point in time is not working. So you need to do something differently. Australian universities, I just say universities across the world, are becoming much more adaptable to the challenges that there are in the world. And they do understand that things need to be done differently. But as I said earlier, they are also very big machineries with long histories and so on. So if there is a challenge for universities, it is to be able to do things differently quicker. I think that is the challenge. There is the understanding that needs to happen. So it's more around the responsiveness to the needs of society. That's where the challenge is at this point in time.
Thank you very much indeed for those comments. And I think that I'm looking over at our Master of Ceremonies, and he says that we have just a few minutes for questions from the floor. So we'll get a microphone to you if you'd like to ask any one of our panellists a question. Do we have a question from the floor? Yes. If you'd like to state your name and where you're from.
Hi everyone, my name is Say Devendra. I'm from Singapore. I'm currently a Murdoch student. I'm due for graduation this coming Sunday. So my question to the panel, to everyone is, on the topic of disruption, when do we know whether a disruption is good or bad, and where do we actually stop the disruption? Because too much of a good thing can sometimes be bad as well. So your opinions, please.
I'll have a go at that. So I guess a good example of that, and I'll bring it back to a West Australian perspective, is Uber. So Uber came into the Perth market, and that had a positive impact for myself. Trying to get a taxi, I'd get an Uber instead. It was cheaper, it was quicker, but had a negative impact on the people that had bought taxi plates in Western Australia. And as a result, those plates decreased in value quite significantly. So you have the good and the bad aspect of that. I guess that's where government comes into it. That's where they need to make sure that they manage the change. Government need to be ahead of the change. The issue that you have is that creating laws and acts of parliament takes a long time. So with technology being quicker, innovation and things changing quicker, it's like a problem that you've got where you've got to sort of see the things that are coming and stop it. But I think it's a delicate balance. You are going to have the good and the bad with any change that occurs.
Yeah, look, I think it's a great question. I might comment because on the taxi journey from my office to this location, the taxi driver was complaining about Uber along the way, and I wanted to talk to him about driverless taxis, but I thought that would be too provocative. But there is a social dimension. There is a social dimension to this. So you would know that Singapore announced this week driverless buses that will operate on the campus of NTU. A driverless taxi service is now operating in the One North precinct. So this technology is going to be here very soon. It is here, but it will be mainstream very soon. How many taxi drivers are there in Singapore? 50,000? 60,000? So what do you do to address their particular needs from that kind of disruption? So it's a very good question. We need to consider the social dimension of the changes that we're witnessing. Do we have another question? Yes.
Thank you. You mentioned, Evan, 4 requirements for success, and you started with creating a culture of innovation. And I wonder if you can tell us, in an organisation such as CBA, banking is traditionally thought of as conservative, but on the other hand, it's being actively disrupted in all sorts of ways. How do you create a culture of innovation in an organisation like yours?
What you do is you empower staff. So what the Commonwealth Bank has done, and we're not, banks in general, they empower their staff to get involved. And you do that through like competitions that we run where staff are promoted if they have an idea or a concept or a product that will put the customer the centre of what we're trying to achieve. So it's those 4 elements. Leadership need to buy in, but the culture is rewarding and promoting staff that do the right thing, because that's how you actually drive the change. But it takes time. Our bank has been doing it for nearly 10 years. That's when they've actually come out and said, this is a really core focus of what we want to do, and this is what we want to be about. And it goes into KPIs and various other things. So it's about individual behaviours, but getting everyone to read from the same page and then reinforcing those values as well.
And I think we have time for one additional quick question, if there's one. No? No? If not, then please allow me to thank all of our panellists this afternoon. Thank you very much indeed for all of your insightful comments. And could I invite the audience now to join with me in thanking our panel.